Let's start.
Dear LLSP alumni and alumni, Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the February 2021 Lunch and Learn interview. Today, I will be interviewing the Executive Director of Karama, Ms. Rahma Abdel Alim. Ms. Abdel Alim was raised in Philadelphia and was an active member in Masjidullah in Philadelphia during her youth. She is a product of the Philadelphia public school system. Ms. Abdel Alim is a proud graduate of the Philadelphia High School for Girls. After high school, she matriculated at Duke University, where she graduated with a double major in religion and sociology and a certificate in markets and management studies. Ms. Abdel Alim obtained her JD from the University of Michigan Law School and worked at King & Spalding, a top international corporate law firm, for 14 years. Ms. Abdel Alim has served as a cadet troop leader for a Muslim Girl Scouts troop in Maryland since 2016. She also served on the board of the Capital Area Muslim Bar Association as treasurer from 2017 to 2019, and continues to represent the Capital Area Muslim Bar Association as its representative on the National Association of Muslim Lawyers. As the executive director of Karama, Ms. Abdel Alim advocates for civil rights, religious freedom, empowerment, and justice for women around the world. So, Rahma, let's start at the beginning with your youth in Philadelphia. Two things stand out to me, and I'd like you to share a bit more about both these things with our audience. First, tell us a bit more about Masjidullah.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Sarah. Masjidullah is part of the Imam Waqti Muhammad community, which for some of you who don't know, it's it came from the Nation of Islam when they converted over to Sunni Islam back in 1975. So Masjidullah was part of the first wave of masjids that came about. Philadelphia always was a major part of the Nation of Islam, so Masjidullah became a major part of just the Imam Waqti Muhammad community. So it is primarily African-American, and it was established in the late 70s, early 80s. My father actually was the imam since the early 80s, up until the early 2000s. He's now the imam emeritus. But Masjidullah is in the West Oak Lane section of Philadelphia. So anyone who knows, it's kind of like northwest section near Germantown, for anybody who knows Philadelphia. So it is an area, and Philadelphia is unique, so that it's one of the major cities that has a very large African-American Muslim population, and not just a large African-American Muslim population, but it has a very active African-American Muslim population. So they've been active in politics for years. I can remember from the time I was a young child, always having representatives coming. They do a lot of community works for seniors. When COVID-19 hit, they have a daycare that's attached to the masjid, but they started doing hot lunches for the neighborhood children during COVID. So it's always been really active in the Philadelphia kind of faith community.
Mm-hmm. I'm familiar with that lunch program because my family foundation has supported them. We think it's a great program. So second, you're a graduate of a historic school, the Philadelphia High School for Girls, or Girls High, as it's known in Philly.
So Girls High was the oldest and one of the few left public high schools for girls. And people are always like, there can be a public school only for girls? Yes, there can be. And you will usually when you meet people from Philadelphia who no longer live in Philadelphia, the chances are, if they're women, they probably went to Girls High. We have a very long storied history. I believe it was 1848 or something like that. I still remember joining an interfaith book club and there being a woman who had graduated in 1948 from Girls High. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's true. Because you hear that all the time, like, oh, there's always Girls High, girls everywhere. But in this interfaith book club, this older Jewish woman was like, oh my gosh. And people are like, I can't believe that you guys bonded. Because right away we started chatting about Girls High and they were like, okay, what does this Muslim girl have in common with this older Jewish woman? And it was Girls High. So
yeah, well, it's where is it? It's Broad and Olney, or
Broad and Olney, which is
Broad and Olney, and it's been there for a while because it moved a couple of times in its early years, but it's been stable at Broad and Olney for a long time.
At least since the 1940s. It moved to
Wow,
Rock Island, and since that's a transportation hub right there, it's easy to get
precisely.
people, girls from all around, the Philadelphia area.
Exactly.
And it's a magnet school, so it's, something that you apply to get into. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was a great experience because I think that that was the first time that I was really told, as a girl and becoming a young woman, you can do anything as a leader. And if you're interested in STEM, that's fine, like science, technology, engineering, and math. If you're, if you're interested in the arts, that's fine. Politics, you can do anything as a girl's high girl. And that was really a motivating factor, especially when you hear so much people like, oh, you can't do that. Oh, that's not what women should do. It was great going to a school that really reaffirmed women's leadership. And so from the very, hearing about it in high school and the president of class, president of school, everybody is a woman. It's like, oh, great. I can see myself being this position. So that really was a great foundation for me.
That's amazing. Well, moving on, please tell us a bit about your interesting choice to go for both a double major in religion and sociology and a certificate in markets and management studies. You must have been studying every waking moment, and your interests are so broad.
I actually was not, but what I always found fascinating when I first applied to Duke, and the first thing I did before my classes actually started was a program called Project Genesis, which was an interfaith program, was supposed to be helping religious students as they were coming into Duke University, which is a Methodist university. So when it was called Project Genesis, called Interfaith, I was so excited. I thought I was going to meet, all my nice Muslim friends, and I got there and I was the only Muslim. And in
Wow.
participating in that, there were a lot of discussions about Christian-Jewish relations, and they basically ignored me until I finally exploded. And anyone who knows me knows that after I'll take but so much, and then I'll make my voice heard. So I finally said, there's more than just Jews and Christians in this world. There's more than just Jews and Christians at Duke University. I know that for a fact. Um, you need to start talking about other people. And that actually caught the interest of the dean of the chapel, who was actually at the program and was like very interested in what I had to say and how I projected myself. And he really got me engaged in working at the Duke Chapel. I was in charge of, for I think 1 or 2 years, in charge of their gifting of money to local nonprofits that went through the Duke Chapel, went through me. I was the head of the committee who was giving out the money
Wow.
that they collected on
Good
Sundays
training.
to the nonprofits. So that get me interested in religion and realizing that for me, I believe that learning about people's religion really tells you a lot about them. So people are like, why didn't you just do psychology? I like learning about people as groups. So that's why I did sociology and religion, because I felt that learning more about people as groups really kind of told me more about people. And marketing and management, I always had a love of thought I was going to be a business person. I maybe never get there, but at the time, that was the only offer of kind of like a business offering that Duke had. So I did all of that in 4 years. People are always like, wow, you did all that. Yeah, I did. And it was just being really strategic and not wasting any time on classes. So I took intro to sociology freshman year, first semester. So I just ended up taking some classes early enough that I didn't even know I needed. And so
Ah,
but I loved learning about different people. And it really kind of forced me to think more about myself and learning about myself as well. So I find it fascinating learning about different religions in general, because you really learn about a person with their
yeah.
religious or non-religious background.
I'm just curious because when I was an undergraduate at Stanford University, there were very few foreign undergraduates, and whatever programs there were for foreign students were geared at graduate students. Okay. And was that the same at Duke when you went? Because I imagine they must have in the professional schools, law school and business school and so on, they must have Muslim students there.
Yeah, so
Or
they had
was it not
Muslim.
so much? Mm-hmm.
No, so they did have some students in undergrad. It was just that program that I went to when school started
Ah,
that there were not many. But
I see.
the Muslim student population has grown and grown. We now have a Muslim Student Alumni Association.
Wow.
But the group of Muslim students, we can go back to the early 1960s as in the graduate students, but more in the undergrad started in earnest in the 1980s, the 1990s, there were quite a few. And my college roommate was also a Muslim, and we did have an MSA, but not as much as now. Duke has like Muslim life at Duke. They have a chaplain. They didn't have all that when I was at Duke.
Wow. Wow. I can see why you want to go and do your executive director training at Duke. It'll be reconnecting with your roots.
Yeah.
Yalla, inshallah. So, Rahma, when you graduated from Duke, did you know that you wanted to become a lawyer? I mean, with your undergraduate degrees, you could have gone on in several different directions.
Well, not only did I know I was going to be a lawyer, but I started law school 11 days after I finished undergrad. So I didn't really take a break.
You don't let any grass grow under your feet.
Funny enough, related to my work I do at Karama, my essays for law school were about religious freedom. I actually look back and chuckle because I'm like, wow, I was like projecting all those years ago and what I was going to be doing now. But it was about how important religious freedom is in the United States, is why I wanted to go to law school. So I chuckle when I'm like, I wrote about this, that I'm actually doing it now. It's actually a great connection to where I always thought I was going to start. I took some time off in between and did, worked at a big law firm, but I've circled back to, the mission, as my father calls it. He has been telling me since I was a child that you were born for the mission. And I was like, what mission are you talking about? This is not Star Wars, which my father is obsessed with. It's like, what?
Oh, good. He and I can watch Star Wars together.
But when he talks about the mission, he really talks about, he feels that the mission for my sister and I is really empowering Muslim women around the world. He really thinks that that is the mission of, American Muslim women, just because we have so many things that are given to us here that we don't even appreciate. And so he has really felt that that has been the mission for so long. So he was quite excited when I came to Karama, because he was like, yeah, not quite the mission. I was, law school made sense. But then when I went to a big law firm, he was like, but you're making money. So, coming back and circling back to Karama was actually something that he was really quite excited about.
No, that's fabulous. Well, this is a little bit sort of off to the side. I think we've established that you do have a broad range of interests. And so I want to ask you about this. I know you're very active as a cadet troop leader. Were you a Girl Scout when you were a girl, or did you come to it later on in life? It seems very consistent to me with your lifelong involvement in developing young women into leaders.
So, I was asking about it because my maternal grandmother was a troop leader. My mother was a Girl Scout. And when I was younger, I remember being a brownie for a hot second, but it was not a long time. I think we had a Muslim troop at our masjid for maybe a year, and it just did not last. But as I moved to the DC area, I knew quite a few people, and they were like, would you be interested? And I was like, well, what age do I need? And they're like, oh, cadets. I'm like, oh, what age is that? And they're like, middle school. I'm like, you're giving me the hardest group of adolescents, the real, but it has really been a joy. And it's so great seeing them. My earliest girls are now ambassadors, which are the like seniors in high school. So seeing some of them
17,
now
18. Yeah.
go off to college, I'm like, oh, I remember when you were just angst and everything was so hard, and now you're just like, Sister Ram, it's so great to see you. I was like, remember, you didn't really like me when you were a cadet, because I was like, do your work, you can study hard. And I think it's really beneficial to a lot of the girls to see someone who is not just saying, well, after high school you can get married. And marriage is important, but I really think that young girls nowadays really need to be educated, and we need to really be pushing them to go to some kind of post-high school education, or, find something that they can self, care for themselves. And I think too often we don't give them enough of the tools they need to care for themselves. So that's the beauty of Girl Scouts, is that's really introducing them to a lot of different areas, like selling Girl Scout cookies. I know for most of us, the cookies go right to our hips, but we're teaching them about entrepreneurship, about business plans, sales. That's they're learning all of those skills early on as Girl Scouts, so they can translate later on into life. And so many women who, even if we think about in politics, there's so many women, when they've been successful, they look back and say they were Girl Scouts. And I love being associated with something that's so, like, Girl Scouts has such a great reputation, and seeing Girl Scouts around the world, and especially here in the United States, and seeing women in power say, I was a Girl Scout, it really makes it, like, okay, it's worth going to these Girl Scout troop meetings and putting up with these 11, 12, and 13-year-olds because it'll be worth it. And I think just investing in the girls is so important because I don't think we invest enough time and energy into our youth. And I think that that's when we need to spend the most time. We love on babies, we like hug on little kids, but when they start getting that awkward preteen, teenage years, we're like, they'll be okay. They'll get it. That's when they really need the loving. And so I really feel like Girl Scouts gives them that kind of security that they really need to really mature into the women that they can become.
Sounds like from your end, what they got was tough loving, but that's good. They need to know that they can aspire, but they need to do the work and that we'll provide the support, but we don't want them doing nothing with their
Nothing.
lives. Well, whew. Yeah, I was never a Girl Scout. And my daughter was, as you put it about your mother, she was a brownie for a hot minute and then she was out of it. But I have always respected the kind of leadership training that a lot of young girls have who've turned into very interesting women have told me about their time as Girl Scouts. Okay, so it looks like everything you've done was just sort of leading you towards becoming Karama's ED. So do you have a vision of where you'd like to take Karama over the next, say, 5 years?
Well, I like to step back and tell you how I even ended up at Karama. My sister, as a lot of you guys know, is on the board of directors, and she had for years been telling me, take the Law and Leadership Summer Program. And I was like, I don't have time for 3 weeks. I don't have time to do that. And then in 2017, we had our inaugural executive session, which was a week. And I was like, okay, I can't do 3 weeks, but I can give you a week. And I will tell you that taking that 1 week program was transformative. I know that people have heard it over and over again, but even as a daughter of an imam, as a religion major, taking, legal classes before, it was so transformative to hear from the different lectures, to hear Dr. El-Hibri talk about Islamic law. I mean, the Islamic worldview, it was so like, wow. And I was like, it was finally making the connection for me, bringing all the aspects of what I have been working on for so long. And so when I realized, I'm like, wow, this is what I want to do. A few months later, when I was offered to become the executive director, it all kind of fell in place. I was like thinking about it. And then I called my dad and he was like, this is the mission. He was so excited. I've never heard someone so excited before about a child getting a job. He was never this excited about anything else. And he was like, this is the mission. And so when I came to Crom, I was like, I don't know what mission he's talking about. He's still talking about this mission all the time. He's like, yay, the mission. And I came to Crom in October 2017, and they had already had plans to go to the Philippines in March. And so I came, halfway into the plans, had to help, do all the logistics. I was just supposed to be going to do the logistical part. And unfortunately, one of our main lecturers, who's going to be lecturing on leadership, got sick with the flu the week we were leaving. And all of a sudden, I was like, wait a second. Okay, we got to find somebody else. And I was like, wait a second, I can do this. I can do the leadership ones. And I will say that when I was in the Philippines and was able to interact with the women there in our Philippine Institute, which was based off a law and leadership program, I really realized then that that's what, my mission was. And really, I'm seeing the empowerment of these women, seeing women who were so excited about just being Muslim and being able to share that. Most of the women in the Philippines were madrasa teachers.
Mhm.
And to see these madrasa teachers, I mean, I tell the story all the time. People are like, why do you love this story so much? We were in class. I had to be at every lecture. So the other lecturers came in, did their lectures and go. But every lecture I sat in, as the logistical person, because I still had to do the logistics. So I'm
Mhm.
sitting there off in the corner typing. And all of a sudden I hear Dr. El-Hibri yelling at the students. I'm like, my God, what's happening? Let me focus. Why is she yelling at them? And one student had asked about polygamy. And
Ah,
Dr. El-Hibri asked, well, where is it in the Quran? And so in answering her question, where is it in the Quran? Because as all of us who know Dr. Al-Hibri, she is a lover of the Quran. The Quran is like everything.
Back to basics.
Oh my God,
You
everything.
have to start there.
So she was like, where is it in the Quran? And their answers were, well, in the Filipino code and the Sharia code in the Philippines. And she was like, I
Not
don't
what I asked
know.
you.
She's like yelling at them, where's the Quran? I'm like jumping up, running over, trying to get. And then one woman said, she's like, Doctor, we don't have our own Qurans. And it stopped me. She looked at me, I looked at her, and we were like, what? What do you mean you don't have your own Quran? And the women in that room, I think they were between 35 and 40, none of them had their own Qurans. They had been taught.
Sounds like we need a fundraising drive at Karama to buy 100 Qurans with good English translations and send it to them. It's the best thing we could do.
So yeah, when they said that, we were like, you don't have your own Quran? It had never even crossed our minds to put that in. I mean, we were there on a grant. We had never even considered buying Qurans and bringing it to them. We always assumed that everyone had, like, it's an assumption that I no longer make, but at the time, it was an assumption I made that you're a Muslim, of course you have a Quran.
And the madrasa teacher, how do you teach without the
Well,
book?
teaching is what you memorized
Exactly.
and what they told you it meant,
Mhm.
because some of you may or may not know Arabic. So it's
Mhm.
what the imams told you it meant, and you're teaching it to the next generation.
Mhm.
And when I realized that, I was like, oh my goodness. And actually at the end of the program, we were so upset after we found out, and we were there through the State Department.
Mhm.
They were able to get some Qurans, so that I would tell you on the last day when we were doing our closing ceremony, we did not have enough Qurans for everyone. So we were like, first come, first serve for these Qurans. They bum rushed the stage to get. And I have never seen someone move so fast. And as I told Dr. El-Hibri, I was like, I feel bad because I can remember getting a Quran from my father for an Eid gift when I was like 10
Yeah.
and being like,
Yeah.
really? This is my Eid gift?
Yeah.
And seeing the joy and happiness that they had. And I was like, wow, this is what, my mission is to really connect with women around the world, and especially Muslim women around the world who have been ignored for too long. For too long, it's kind of like an afterthought. And
Mhm.
to me, it's just ridiculously shameful that our beautiful religion has become a patriarchy overlay on every.
Co-opted.
Oh my gosh. And so I really feel that that's the mission, and it's something that Karama feels strongly about. I mean, anyone who's read Islamic Worldview, that Dr. El-Hibri, or has seen her presentations, you can't walk away but feeling like we need to do our part to help Muslim women around the world. So really that's what it's a long answer to your question, but that is why I'm with Karama, because I really feel that Karama is in a unique position to help Muslim women around the world.
So that's what brought you to Karama. Now, looking forward, where would you like to take Karama in the next 6 years? What aspects of Karama would you like to change, improve, switch out for other things? Just sort of thinking strategically, because you are clearly a strategic thinker. Where do you think Karama should focus for the next 5 years?
Well, funny enough, even before COVID, I was starting to think of online programming to be a way for us to keep pushing our agenda forward and being able to reach more people. So I would love to really improve and get to the point where we can have basically a Karama University, just like the big universities, but having so many online programming that either it is already on demand, that people can on demand see, a Dr. El-Hibri course, a Dr. El-Wani course, a course by Amr Abdullah on conflict resolution. I would love to get our online programming up to the point where we could say, oh, we just have to, refresh this every year, but that we have these either on demand or just live online programming. I think that really for 2021, I know it's just February, but I don't feel that we are going to be in a position to travel in 2021. So I really want to get the online programming up. After the online programming, I really enjoyed going to the Philippines. I really enjoyed the short burst of having just a short period of time. And I believe we were there for 3 weeks, not quite 3 weeks,
Mhm.
maybe 2 weeks.
Mhm.
and having an institute that we can just come and really educate and show them what they can do and give them the information so they can share with their communities. Because what is always hard about our Law and Leadership Summer Program, which is a great program, it's 3 weeks, but it's getting the 3 weeks off from work. It is traveling from wherever you're from to stay in DC for 3 weeks away from family and friends. So being able to go to the different locations would be great. But that's why I think the online programming is so important, because I think we can reach so many more people
Mhm.
who no longer have to travel. And I think that what COVID has taught us all is that we can be connected through all these online platforms and really make a difference. And I really think that for Karam to go forward, we have to take advantage of online programming,
Mhm.
really start connecting more with our alumni. So to see what our alumni are doing after the program. There's so many alumni go back and they're in the trenches again, and then we don't hear from them. We're like,
Mhm.
okay. And then we meet people down the road, especially for me. I have met so many alumni who didn't go through while I was here the past 3 years, but will be like, oh, I was in I did law and leadership, back in the early days. And I'm like, I didn't know that. Thanks for sharing that with me. Can I put you down as one of our, success stories? I mean, people will come and tell me oh, I did law and leadership program. And that's the reason why I went to law school. I'm like, thanks for sharing. But, like, if I hadn't bumped into them, I wouldn't know. So really trying to get our alumni to really reconnect with Karama and see ways in which all of us can work together. I think too often people are like, well, what can Karama do for me? And I think that people have to remember that Karama is a nonprofit. We do not have a bucket of money waiting. I think some people confuse us with foundations that are willing to, oh, let me go to Karama so that they can fund this form. We're a nonprofit, so we aren't funding
We
people.
spend a lot of time begging for money just
Oh,
for our
exactly.
own
We're,
operations.
we are always trying to find our own funding. What we have, our educational resources, the advocacy, that's what we do on our end. But right now, sometimes we get people saying, oh, is Karama going to go back into direct legal services? No, we couldn't help as many people as we wanted to doing direct legal services. Because doing direct legal services, you're helping one woman, maybe two. It depends on how many clients you have. What we're doing now in education and advocacy, we're helping so many more. So that is really where I see us going forward. I would love to, as two of us have discussed, do continuing legal education classes, because the number of people that ask me like, oh, can you tell me about Muslim marriage? I have this Muslim client who said that she was married in the old, but I don't know what that means. And what does this divorce thing mean? And, she's telling me that she can't have custody of her kids because, and so I think that there are a lot of lawyers out there, especially do family law and immigration law, who need information from Muslim lawyers who can say,
Yes.
this is what this
And
is
maybe
what,
even country specific as
yeah,
well, because of course, Sharia is not interpreted the same in all
right.
countries.
Yeah, but even if we just start here in the US, it is
Absolutely.
amazing how many times this issue comes up, because Muslims are like any other group.
Mhm.
We have a huge divorce rate just like every other group. And
Mhm.
most of the time, the attorneys representing Muslim women are not Muslims.
Mhm.
Even representing Muslim men are not Muslims, but they
Mhm.
are trying to interpret what they think is Islam. And so they're just
Mhm.
like, well, this is what my client told me. I don't know any differently. So I have to go with that. I don't really have time to do my own research. And it's amazing how much misinformation is out there. And that's what we're rubbing up against, is that we are constantly hitting up against the this misinformation, the patriarchal interpretations that have been translated into this must be your religion and it hates women. I mean, that's what is really out there at this point.
Right. Well,
And
that's what comes across to people, because it's kind of like if you're a psychiatrist, you begin to think that everybody is crazy because that's what you see.
what you see. And so, I mean, through our Department of Justice Technical Assistance Grant, we have seen how many lawyers have asked us questions, have come. I mean, it's amazing how many people come to those trainings that we did on American Muslims. And they're just like, thank you. I had so many questions and
Mhm.
I didn't know who to ask. And so if Karam is out there in the forefront saying, okay, you have questions, here are the answers. Here is, a resource that you can use. This is the information you need, really doing, the myths, myth busting. When we started our Debunking the Myth series, there are myths out there about Muslim marriage and Muslim divorces that really, and child custody issues and Muslim families that really need to be debunked. And one of the things I want to do in the next 5 years is really have an annual CLE on just Muslim marriage and divorce, uh, annual on Muslim inheritance. I mean, that's another thing that we know that we're going to die, but none of us, so few of us, I'll not saying, so few of us are prepared on what that's going to do to our family down the road. We don't have anything in place, and really talking about ways in which Karama can be a resource to share with others what they should be doing on those issues.
Absolutely. I mean, all of us natawakkal ala Allah, but even so, we are required to make provision and not just blindly go forward, hoping for the best without making any plans. So let me just ask you this question. You don't have to have an answer to it, but you've talked now about the ways in which Karama can expand its educational mission, which is part of it. You've talked about how historically the Law and Leadership Program has clearly inspired women, Muslim women, to become leaders. But on the scholarship side, so the third part, or actually the first part of our mission, is to produce and promote scholarship from a non-patriarchal perspective. And we have access to the lifetime of work that Dr. Al-Hibri has left for us and what she's currently working on. But have you given any thought to how we might continue to produce scholarship?
Well, I think that we will in the future find someone that we really want to connect with further on scholarship. Right now, as you mentioned, we are focusing on the scholarship that we already have from Dr. Al-Hibri. She has so much, actually, for Women's History Month starting next week, which is shocking because February is over. We're trying to put together a whole page on our website just dedicated to what she has done in some of her scholarship. And I noticed when I was going back through all of our stuff, that several years ago we did short videos of her discussing her papers so that people wouldn't have to read it. And people are like, is that, we have to come to the idea that right now in our current way things happen, people aren't sitting down to read scholarly articles.
No.
And we need to be able to still connect with people. And so I saw those videos and I was like, this is a great idea of ways of making her scholarship more accessible to another generation. I mean, this is really, we've all gotten to a point. I used to be able to read novels that are 300 pages now. If someone says 300 pages, I'm like, anything
Your
around
eyes glaze over.
who has time for that? And so really making her scholarship into bite-sized pieces, making her scholarship into infographics to catch people's eyes to actually read it. Really keeping track of who is getting this, because so often we don't realize that, we just think that Muslims are talking about this, but there are a lot of non-Muslims who are really interested in this subject matter who are always referencing Dr. Al-Hibri's work. And so we really want to take advantage of that. But in the future, I do see that we are going to have to need, new scholars that we bring in and just amplify, even if we don't bring them into Karama, but amplify as friends of Karama or of people who have interesting work that we are supporting and sharing with our community. But I do think there are a lot of people out there who are doing some excellent scholarship right now, and that we will continue to support any way we can.
The reason I ask is because I had this brilliant idea, but we have to fund it as with everything else. And that would be to set up a fellowship fund where one could give a $5,000 fellowship to somebody to ask them to write a paper on a particular topic with shared rights. That way we are current scholarship and as a way of also highlighting young Muslim talent so that we continue to grow our pool of young scholars. But that was just my idea.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. What we have found over the past year is that there's
Mhm.
so much scholarship that needs to be done out there. I mean, what we've learned from just what's happening in the United States and even learning about, Black companions of the Prophet. I mean, we need to look at women companions of the Prophet. People right now have been
Yep.
so focused on Black companions, but there were a lot of women who were so powerful in the transmission of our beautiful religion that nobody even knows about. No one even knows about, the oldest university in the world was a Muslim woman creating it in Morocco.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
we need to get back to the point where we are celebrating all the women who have contributed to our great religion and really
Mhm.
doing that on a basis so that people can no longer say, oh, why are you're a Muslim and you're a woman? Don't you
Yeah,
know?
how can you be in there? It's so
Exactly.
sexist. How can you do it? What do you mean it's so
Exactly, really showing them that
sexist?
it's not the religion that's sexist, it's the culture that overrides it.
That's
And
right.
it's a quote from Dr. El-Hibri that I always share with people because she says it all the time and doesn't even realize how profound it is. But she says, "Culture divides us, but the Quran unites us."
And that's us. Yeah.
And to me, that is what Quran is all about, is that the different cultures might divide us, but the Quran is what unites us as Muslims. And that is really where we want to be going forward as Quran, is just really focusing on how the Quran has really been our foundation and of everything we do and what we're building on.
MashaAllah. All I can say is Karama is very lucky to have you for our ED. And thanks for
Thank you.
taking the time and sharing all of this, stories, the details. I could go on forever, but we do have to bring it to an end. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Great.
Did you want to say anything more about your plans for Women's History Month? You mentioned you were going to be hopefully putting up some of the short videos. Anything else that you want to announce for Women's History Month?
Yeah, I love for everyone to make sure that they keep track of us on social media because, as usual, the UN Committee on the Status of Women is going all virtual this year, but you do have to register. But we will be doing a presentation there, and look for some other little tidbits that we're working on for celebration of Women's History Month. So definitely be on the lookout for all the things we're going to be doing in March leading up to Ramadan in April. Ramadan will be here before we know it. It's in less than 50 days. So inshallah, we'll have some great programming during Ramadan as well.
We certainly do. And remember, on social media, make sure that you amplify our voice by sharing our stuff. Okay. Well, I guess this is the time when I do my quick plugs. So speaking of Ramadan, our guest for March is going to be Ms. Nazima Qureshi, who is a nutritionist and author of a book, The Healthy Muslims book. Ahead of the start of Ramadan, we will be discussing ways to fast in a healthy manner. And another thing we will be doing, you will see it drop just before Ramadan, is an interview with our board member, Ms. Salma Hassan Ali. Some of you know her for her 30 Days, 30 Deeds blog. And for this year, she is creating a book, which is a compilation of articles that she has written over the past 9 years on her blog. And the book, it's a limited edition print. She'll have one to show you it. A lot of the illustrations and the way it was put together is by an Afghan artist. And we will be having a lecture with her. And the book will be available again once Ramadan starts. So, stay in touch, amplify our voices, and we'll see you at the next Lunch and Learn, inshallah.
Alaikum.
Thank you.